are you when even your own reflection lies? In René Magritte's Not to be Reproduced, a man stares into a mirror, yet the glass shows only the back of his head. The book on the mantelpiece reflects normally, but the man's reflection refuses to follow the rules. What the heck is going on here then? Magritte takes ordinary objects and moments, then shifts them just enough to make them strange, unforgettable. From clouds drifting inside rooms to hidden faces behind apples and men in bowler hats merging with landscapes. His images have seeped into films, ads and album covers. They feel familiar, yet they linger, uneasy in the mind. So what is Magritte revealing about reality, identity, and the truths we take for granted? René Magritte was born in 1898 in Le Seine, a small town in Belgium. His childhood was quiet, but not without tragedy. His mother, when he was just 14, took her own life. This early loss left an indelible mark on him, shaping his fascination with absence, mystery, and the limits of perception. Magritte often said that ordinary life was never ordinary. What we see is rarely what we truly experience. He began drawing as a child, attending formal lessons in 1910, and later studied at the Académie Royale des Beaux-Arts in Brussels. Early on, he experimented with Impressionism and Cubism, but he soon discovered Surrealism, the movement that would define his career. Unlike other Surrealists who reveled in chaos or dreamlike abstraction, Magritte's style was precise, almost clinical. He polished out any trace of his hand, any hint of flamboyance. He believed that stylization could distract viewers from the painting's statement. Every line, every shadow, every brushstroke was deliberate for him, designed to make the impossible seem tangible and the ordinary profound. This precision is part of what makes Not to be Reproduced so striking. On the surface, it's simple: a man, a mirror, a book. Yet every detail matters. The mirror doesn't reflect the man's face, it reproduces him, but in a way that defies expectation. The book, a copy of Edgar Allan Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, reflects accurately. This juxtaposition of fidelity and impossibility forces us to slow down, to notice, to question. Magritte's work isn't about spectacle, it's about subtle, persistent unease. It asks, what is real? What belongs to the viewer? And what belongs to the artist? Understanding Not to be Reproduced also means understanding its commissioner, Edward James. James was an eccentric British aristocrat, a poet, and one of the most important patrons of the Surrealist movement. He supported Salvador Dali, Magritte, and other Surrealists, often commissioning works that challenged conventions and expectations. Magritte admired James, not just for his wealth, which enabled artistic freedom, but for his intellect and poetry. James believed, as Magritte did, that the function of a painting is to make poetry visible. In 1937, Dali introduced Magritte to James, and shortly after, Magritte painted two portraits of his new patron, The Pleasure Principle and Not to be Reproduced. These portraits are fascinating because they subvert the traditional idea of portraiture. In neither painting do we see James's face. Magritte seems to be saying that a portrait is never a neutral record, it's a lens through which the artist interprets reality. In Not to be Reproduced, the man looks at his own reflection, but we understand that what we see is filtered through Magritte's perspective. He transforms the familiar into a philosophical puzzle. The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole truth either. This concept resonates with something Henri Matisse once said. Above all, I do not create a woman, I make a picture. Matisse emphasized that a painting is not reality itself, it's a representation shaped by the artist. Magritte pushes this idea further. The man in the mirror is not merely looking at himself, he's looking at a reproduction of himself, a reproduction already altered by the artist's vision. The book reflects correctly, highlighting the discrepancy. Even in a quiet room with ordinary objects, Magritte shows that perception is never neutral. The painting's title, La Reproduction Interdite, or The Prohibited Reproduction, adds another layer. Reproduction is often associated with accuracy and truth, the idea that a copy faithfully represents its subject. Magritte challenges this assumption. He asks us to consider, can any reproduction ever truly capture reality? When we reproduce an image or an object, we assume that what we see is reliable, but perception is always filtered. Even mirrors lie to us, framing, cropping, and reflecting only part of the truth. In this sense, Magritte's work is not just about visual representation, it's about epistemology, the study of how we know what we know. How much of what we accept as reality is shaped by interpretation, perspective, or the limitations of our senses across time. Plato, in the Republic, argued that art is twice removed from truth. The true bed exists as an idea, a perfect form. A carpenter can craft a bed, a reproduction of that idea, but it's never the ideal itself. And a painting of that bed is a reproduction of a reproduction, already removed from essence. Aristotle too considered imitation a way of learning, but he warned that imitation could mislead if it obscured underlying principles. In a more modern sense, Kant explored how our perception of objects is mediated by our mental structures, so if a painting appears precise, it cannot escape the subjectivity of both artist and viewer. Magritte's mirror, which refuses to reflect the man's face, embodies this tension perfectly. We're looking at something that seems real, yet it's constructed, interpreted, and inherently incomplete. Not to be reproduced is, in a sense, a mediation on mirrors, portraits, and the limits of representation. The man's reflection isn't just a mirror image, it's a philosophical statement. We're forced to confront the impossibility of fully knowing ourselves or any object through a single image. Magritte's precision, his stripped-down style, and his refusal to dramatise every detail create a quiet intensity. Nothing in the painting shouts, yet everything lingers. Through works like Not to be Reproduced, Magritte shows that surrealism isn't merely about the bizarre or dreamlike. It's about making the familiar strange enough to capture our attention and force reflection. This approach is evident across much of his oeuvre. In The Treachery of Images, 1929, he painted a pipe beneath the words, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," reminding viewers that an image is never the object itself, but a representation shaped by perception. The Son of Man, 1964, with a man's face obscured by a floating green apple, explores hidden identity, the tension between what is visible and what is concealed, and the idea that appearances are always incomplete. Magritte often drew inspiration from the ordinary world around him, as we talked earlier in our video. He would take everyday objects, clouds, bowler hats, apples, windows, and place them in unusual contexts, creating subtle puzzles that unsettled perception while remaining relatable. He once said, "Everything we see hides another thing. We always want to see what is hidden by what we see," highlighting his interest in the invisible layers of reality. Other notable pieces like Golconda, 1953, with countless men in bowler hats floating in the sky, or The Human Condition, 1933, where a painting within a painting blurs boundaries between canvas and landscape, further explore perception, illusion, and the limits of understanding. Through these works, Magritte invites viewers to pause, question, and recognise that reality is never as simple as it seems, and that meaning often lies just beyond the surface. And the purpose of Not to be Reproduced was exactly the same too. Which is why Not to be Reproduced is deceptively simple. A man, a mirror, a book, but layered with meaning. The mirror doesn't reflect, it interprets. The subject isn't just Edward James, he's humanity, questioning itself through the lens of the artist. Magritte teaches us that reality is slippery, that identity is never fixed, and that even something as familiar as a reflection can hold profound mysteries. Every time we look at his work, we're invited to see more deeply, to notice what's often overlooked, and to confront the unexpected truths hiding in plain sight. And what about you? Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen the back of your own head? Ever had an apple bob right in front of your face as you attempt to go about your day? Ever smoke a pipe and halfway through realise it's actually a dolphin in your gob? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're down there, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Because we empathise. And today, I'm wearing a roof tile.